It's Baron with One Chiropractic again, continuing the conversation with Dr. Bob Hoffman from the Master Circle Global. So in our last session, Doc, you kind of shared with us your journey, the journey of the Master Circle. So today I kind of want to start with when you're working with offices and you're bringing their consciousness from a pain-based or a mechanistic or structural base and bringing them over to a neurologically mindset where, you know, as you stated in the last session, one is optimal neurological expression. When you're getting them to that particular mindset, you know, what are you seeing are some of the key things that need to switch in that process for them to be able to start expressing differently in the practice?
It's a great question. First, I want the people watching this to get that you don't have to be a neurologist. It's helpful, but it's not a necessity at all. You don't have to go back to school. You don't have to take a 100-hour diplomate program. None of that is required. Let me tell you what's required. You got to be a really good communicator. You know, I open up a lot of my outside presentations by making this statement. In a perfect world, those of us who had the most consistent, best clinical outcomes should have the best practices. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Right.
Who has the best practices everywhere in the world are the best communicators.
Right.
In fact, this past spring, my partner Dennis Perman and I, we taught a 10-hour seminar and gave out an 80-page book called The Science of Persuasion, teaching docs about how to communicate. That's the biggest hurdle, because communication isn't what you say. It's what the other person hears, interprets, and responds to. You know, George Bernard Shaw, a famous literary giant, said the biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has just taken place. And that is absolutely true. So the fact is, we have to go over some communication concepts first. So let me just throw out a couple of them. There are tons of them. You don't need to know tons. But number one, in no apparent order, when two people are in communication, Baron, the one of the greatest certainty always influences the other person. So you have to speak with certainty, confidence. You can't be 99% confident, because the patient, the other person, will smell the 1% not confident.
That's right.
You got to speak with certainty. Another key concept is this. We have to connect the known to the unknown. It's the easiest way to teach things. So for example, when I tell my patients how much care they need, I use the metaphor of exercise. I say to my patients something like this: nobody would ever think that you can go to the gym once a month and get in great shape. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that if you're desirous of getting into great shape, you got to go multiple times a week for multiple months to get in great shape. Now, there's a second piece, and it's this. Once you've gotten in great shape, no one would ever think that you can now stop exercising and stay in great shape. That's kind of laughable, isn't it? Well, Mrs. Jones, it's the exact same laws of nature that apply to what we do here in our chiropractic practice. We can't fix and balance your brain and your body and allow you to heal from the inside out by seeing you once a month. We need to see you multiple times a week, and we're going to need to see you multiple times a week for multiple months. And once we get you back to a state of health and vitality, and what I mean by that is not only feeling better, but also functioning better, where you sleep more soundly, have more energy, have better digestion, better posture, your immune system is stronger, have handle stress more efficiently, have less anxiety, less cravings, less mood swings. Once we get to that level, you can't stop care and expect to stay there. You have to continue on a program to maintain that. See, patients get that because it's logical. They've already bought into the exercise paradigm, just nobody ever compared it to what we do.
And here's the thing, I'm going to interrupt just briefly because I want to hit this point, because the beauty of that explanation, the way that you said it, actually goes back to point number one. And you're 100% right. listen, you have to believe what you're saying. So many times when doctors are clients of consultants or whatever, they memorize these scripts and they're more focused on making sure they nail the script than actually communicating it from a belief system, from saying, this is exactly what I believe. I was just talking to a doc yesterday and he was struggling with something. And I said, well, before we talk, I got to ask you a question. How often do you adjust your wife? He goes, oh, well, about once a week. I said, well, how often do you get adjusted? He goes, at least once a week, if not once every 2 weeks. I said, okay. I said, then what is your normal care recommendation for your patients? And he's like, well, I normally tell him I want to see him 3 times. And then, we see how it goes. And I said, see, that's my issue, is you're not communicating to the belief system that you actually have. You're communicating to produce an outcome you think is acceptable. And that's exactly what you're talking about here, is you've got to have total confidence in what you're saying and then communicate it in a way. That is a great analogy. I've actually never heard that one. I like that. But there's a million of them, right? Where if we just own that concept that I need the patient to understand really what the pathway to health looks like, then you find a way to communicate it. So I love it. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to impress upon, again, that idea that we have to have confidence and believe in what we're saying, not just say things.
100%. So there are other key communication things. And again, I said I'd give you 2 or 3. Here's a third one, and then we can move on. Facts are forgotten. Stories are remembered and retold. Yeah. I've sat through so many reported findings, observing doctors talking about eburnation on the joints of Luschka and a 17-degree loss of the cervical lordosis, and the patients thinking, what am I going to have for dinner tonight?
Right.
It's over their head. So you got to get this. The 3 biggest sabotages to your ability to communicate are, number 1, we talk in generalities, but people need to hear details and specifics. So for example, on my comment earlier, when you say to the patient, I can help you, I know what you mean. But if I sat outside your office and I asked the next 100 people, what does Dr. Jones mean when he says he can help you? I'm going to get 100 different variations to an answer.
Yeah.
You got to be super specific. So when I said I can help you, and by helping you, what I mean is, and I rattled off some of those things, the patient's going through their mind going, want it, oh, really want it, need it, really need it. See, it becomes more personal. Number 2, we tend to think somehow that the patient graduated with us, that they know what we know. Right. They know what a joints of Luschka is, or eburnation is, or a lordosis is. Yeah. They don't. So I don't want to talk down to them, but I need to speak in a language that they could understand. And number 3, I'm a big fan of logic. Logic is a beautiful thing in life, but it's a terrible medium of communication. When you communicate in logic, it causes people to try to draw a conclusion. When you communicate with emotion, it causes people to take action. So let me give you an example. Doc, if you're watching this, when you do your report of findings, if more often than not you hear the patient say, this was very interesting, let me go home and think about it. Or let me ask my wife, or let me speak with my family physician. I guarantee you your report was logical, because the patient is now going to get other people's opinion or more research or more data to draw a conclusion. Now, sometimes that conclusion is to get started with you, but a lot of times it's not. When you communicate your report with emotion, you hear completely different responses like, Doc, is there any way we can get started today? Doc, is there any time in your schedule this week for me to bring in my wife and kids? You see, emotion creates motion.
Yeah.
Get that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. And, and that's consistent. Everyone knows, well, anyone that watches any videos from me on a regular basis knows that I'm a groupie of Simon Sinek. And that correlates perfectly with his golden circle of leaders start with why, not with what and how. And what and how is logic, right? That's trying to connect it. Buy this car. It's got better gas mileage. It has power windows. It has a new stereo, versus we built a car to make sure that you're the safest for your family, that you can get on that family vacation and never have to worry about whether you're going to, it's the why that we get behind it, which is the very same thing you're talking about there, by telling stories with your patients, explaining to them what the outcome looks like. And I think that's phenomenal. And I don't want to cut you off. Did you have anything else on that talk?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I want to help your viewers remember, again, the purpose of this series is to change the conversation, not only in the profession, but also in your practice, right? We want this series to be a tangible thing. And these are phenomenal gifts that Dr. Hoffman is giving you on just sitting back and rethinking about how you're communicating through that day. And we're going to keep giving you more of this stuff, but I want you to take this concept of really being the most confident person in the room, right? Making sure that we're talking specifically and not in generalities. And then people remember stories, not facts and figures. And so if you're thinking through those processes in your practice and the way that you're communicating on day one, and then you add the communication that you've been learning about the brain and about what's really happening with the adjustment, this is where the change comes, which is why we can validate what Dr. Hoffman's saying about their clients and what's happening when people really buy into this brain over pain type of a mentality. So this is great stuff, man. I appreciate it. I do want to remind the viewers, on the last session, Dr. Hoffman offered an awesome book that gives you articles and gives you great resources about brain-based type stuff. So I want to remind you, all you've got to do is text to this number, 516-231-6762. 516-231-6762. You're going to text the word one. And we remember Dr. Hoffman shared with us, one stands for optimal neurological expression, right? So you're going to text one to that number, and then you're going to get a quick link that's going to ask for your name and your address and an email, and they'll ship that book off to you. I've seen the book. It's an incredible book. It's a great resource. This isn't a bait and switch type of a thing. This is legitimately, I asked Dr. Hoffman if he had some tangible things to give to the people a part of this series. So I do thank you, Dr. Hoffman, for sharing that amazing resource. And then after the book, as a bonus, you're going to get an email a couple days later with some links to some videos where you can see Dr. Hoffman talking about this and giving you examples of how to actually communicate this in your practice. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch, a book resource for you to continue to own in your mind, to be the most confident person about what you're talking about, and then a gift of showing you how to actually communicate those materials in your practice. So Dr. Hoffman, thank you so much. Well, we're going to come back on the next session, and we're going to keep digging into this, and he's going to share more tangible things that you can start adding to your practice to be able to start changing this conversation from pain to brain. Don't forget, send people to our site, share the link to this series so people can join this, because here's the beauty. When we all start getting into this conversation, the more people we have doing it, the better we are individually, right? We're changing the consciousness of our world to understand why they're going to a chiropractor, which has really been our issue for the last 124 years. No one really still to this day understands why they should go to a chiropractor. So imagine a day when people get it, in that example that Dr. Hoffman gave us, that just like going to the gym and working out to stay healthy, imagine a world where they say, I got to go to the chiropractor because I have to have optimal neurological expression. And that's the world that we're trying to create. So Dr. Hoffman, thank you again for your time. Those of you watching, thank you for committing to this series. We're coming back at you tomorrow with more amazing stuff. So God bless your day.